Content warning. This episode contains discussions of grooming and child abuse, which may be triggering or distressing for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
So basically my schedule changed. When he decided I was going to be his wife, I was 13. He was 68 that day when he said it. I think my mom was like, she's not ready. You know what I mean? She's 13. And he was like, we're not going to get married until she's 14 or 15.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's going to get deep. I'm ready.
Child, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into it.
We can talk about it right here, right now, Lanisa, you know we lit. Black and cultivated. Cults ain't just some white people shit. And if we offend you, you can turn us off right now. Click. Cause we gonna talk about it all. Light and darkness, even the evil in politics. That's all, that's it. Black and cultivated. You love it or you hate it.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the pod. And I'd like to welcome to Black and Cultivated someone who is Black and is cultivated. And I'm so hyped that she is here. I'd like to welcome Katurah Topps. Hey, girl, hey.
Thank you so much. Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for
crazy.
being here.
I've never had anybody say Katurah is Black and cultivated in this way, and I know exactly what that means. So,
we in it together.
The unofficial family, yeah.
Exactly, right? Family without even knowing that we fam.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let me brag on you a little bit. Katurah Topps is a civil rights attorney hailing from St. Louis, Missouri, and now in New York. And Katurah uses legal, legislative, and policy-centered approaches at the local, state, and federal level to dismantle racially discriminatory systems that impede the safety of advancement of Black people. What? Yes. Katurah works closely with impacted communities and grassroots organizations across the country to support community-led interventions and demand government transparency and accountability, because that's what we need.
Exactly.
You may also know Katurah from Survivor 45, where she was relentlessly determined and strategic as fuck. She got me on the Survivor train. I ain't watched that shit. I was like, I don't watch that shit. What is this? And I was like, who that? Who that? 45 seasons, and finally, I was like, oh.
45 is the one to watch, though. If you're going to watch one, watch 45.
Watch 45. Facts. In addition, Katurah loves her some hot yoga. I do too. Mm-hmm. She's a foodie and loves getting her travel on. I saw some of your vacation pics. And I am overwhelmed, and I am super grateful that she is here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Let's get into it. First question. What's the name of your cult?
You know, Lanisa, you're the only one who's been able to ask me this directly, and I respond. Because, as you said earlier, you know, obviously I'm just coming from being on TV. And so I just had that experience of what it means to be in a space where you might talk, you might tell your story, and somebody else is going to edit it and do whatever they want to with it. And so I've kind of been a little protective of the name of my cult. And I don't really know why. I'm still kind of trying to unpack that. But recently, as I'm working more towards being able to share my stories and make sure that I'm reaching more people, I've kind of accepted that I'm going to have to say what it is. So It's called the House of Yahweh.
Okay.
It is based in Abeline, Texas. It is a quite pretty famous cult. I feel like most people who've heard of cults have heard of it.
House of Yahweh. House of Yahweh was born in 1974. Is given Gen X, the middle child generation. They died. Good news, kids. Even though their leader died in 2021, they still around. House of Yahweh was founded in Abeline, Texas by Israel? How you say this motherfucker's name? House of Yahweh was founded in Abilene, Texas by Israel Hawkins. His name would be Israel Hawkins? That's just ridiculous. Israel Hawkins. Nigga, what? I'm probably keeping that in. Hawkins was a self-proclaimed prophet and leader who claimed to be the reincarnation of biblical figures. He was a charismatic leader with a flair for the dramatic prophecies and a love for catchy cult chants. Fun fact, apparently Yisrael was a follower of the teachings of the cult I was raised in, the Worldwide Church of God. He took some of their crazy thoughts and mixed it with his crazy thoughts, and ta-da! Crazy thoughts squared. Yisrael looked like a creepy old white man. His ex-wife described him as, quote-unquote, a corn-fed cowboy with a weak chin and a Stetson hat. Damn, that's shady. Interests include end time prophecies, strict dietary guidelines, bigamy, and child brides. Looking for someone who's into doomsday prepping, working for free 99, and having little to no contact with the outside world. Yo, this dude sucks.
Let's back up.
Yeah.
I know, but for the sake of our audience, was this
course.
something that you joined House of Yahweh or were you born into it? Give me the story and the history.
Yeah, so I ended up in the House of Yahweh when I was about 9 years old. And actually, before joining the House of Yahweh, my family had been pretty religious. And when I say family, I really just mean my mom and my siblings. Like, that's kind of just been my core family unit. Sometimes a stepdad here and there, in and out of the picture, but primarily just my mom, me, and my two younger siblings. And growing up in Missouri, I'm in small town, rural Missouri. Like, technically, I'm from St. Louis, but my mom's from small towns around Missouri. And it was just really common, I feel like, for Black people to just find church,
Right.
find a church home, find a space. And so, what I realize now looking back is we actually joined a cult before the House of Yahweh. At the time, I didn't realize that it was a cult, but it was very much just like a pretty rudimentary version of a cult, really. And so I think that's why the House of Yahweh gets such a big view in my memory and my story, because that was a large official cult that was, planned and strategic. And I feel like there were people in place. Whereas before, we were just a small Black family in the middle of Missouri. We would go to Sabbath services, which were, Saturday services, to this man who just had a trailer. It was literally like take like 30 or 40 Black people, cram them in this small man's trailer, and he's just gonna preach at us. That's my first connection or interaction with like extreme religion, where
Yeah.
people are just blindly following someone, where it doesn't really matter who it was. And when I think about that man to this day, of course, I was a child, I was like probably 7, 8. All I remember is he's just a plain man. But for
Yeah.
some reason, like watching these adults just so blindly believe everything he said, and I saw them, they were holding on to every word.
Where do you
And
think that comes from?
I think people were in pain. I've thought a lot about this, and
Yeah.
as someone who remembers looking to the adults around me, particularly my mom, and being like, where is the protection? As I'm right now struggling with that and trying to figure out how do I feel about that, I'm also realizing you've got to be so vulnerable and so
Mm-hmm.
hurt, gone through so much pain to be an adult who says, I'm willing to give up all my agency, all my power, all my freedom, and I will let this random man just tell me what to do. And even if I watch it negatively impact my family, even if I watch it harm my children, even if I watch it harm me, this is what I'm comfortable doing. And I'm like, that's a certain type of person. That's someone who's looking for guidance. And when
Absolutely.
I contrast that first cult, we'll just call it like, cult A, I guess, just thinking about all these people following this man in the trailer. And the crazy thing about it is his wife ended up getting like cancer of some sort and she passed. He had a mental breakdown, literally boarded up the walls of his trailer and didn't talk to anybody. And so you have all these people now really kind of lost, because I think they'd made peace with the idea that we could just follow you and whatever you tell us to do,
Yeah.
now we're safe. And then he just goes away. And I think that's the space that my mom was in when
Mm.
she found out about the House of Yahweh. And that's how we ended up joining.
So she's already in a vulnerable space.
Exactly.
She's already needing some direction. And I say
Exactly.
the same thing with folks of Jonestown. Like when people joke, that is my limit. This is
Yeah.
a funny Kiki
Yeah.
podcast, but when people
Exactly.
joke, I'm like, we ain't gonna put no, drink the Kool-Aid. Because I'm like, those folks were in a desperate spot. There is a vulnerability and a desperation that comes with following someone blindly.
Yeah, exactly. You're desperate. You're desperate so much. And even now, when I think back as an adult, right, it's hard for me to kind of have that blind, pointing blame at the adults around me,
Same.
because I am a civil rights lawyer and I only focus on Black issues. So I know firsthand as a Black person walking around in this body how hard it is
Facts.
just existing. Like literally, I don't have kids. I'm privileged because I, have a career. I'm able to say I have
Facts.
money. I don't have a lot of the stressors that a lot of Black people may have, and I still feel the weight of racism just
Exactly.
existing. Now, if you imagine adding children to that, adding poverty to that, adding
Mm-hmm.
stressors to that, I get
Work
it.
stress,
Exactly. And
coworkers,
and
all of
that's not
that.
even me adding what I know on a data level, where I know you might feel stressed today, but realistically, we're more likely than any other group to be in spaces where there's no clean air, where there's no access to healthcare, where there's no real formal training of how to interact with your children, where you don't have education. So
Right.
it's like I know on all the levels that this space was never meant for us to survive and thrive in, and I can understand. So I just want to always add that, like a compassionate note to people in desperate
Yeah.
situations do desperate things. I think it would be unfair to talk about any group of people, but
Yeah.
particularly a group of people who are already oppressed, who are
Right.
already in a country that never wanted them here and that only brought them here for pain and continues to
Yeah.
do that to them. And then say, how come you didn't have the best go of it? How come you
Absolutely.
didn't figure it out perfectly? How come you
Right.
fell victim to someone who was looking at you and intentionally deciding that your brokenness is going to be their tool for control, I
For
guess.
control. Everyone is seeking how to belong in this world. Everyone is
Yeah,
seeking the
exactly.
meaning of life in some way.
Exactly.
You add then, like you said, these other factors, and ta-da! And this
Yeah.
is when you get
Yeah.
people joining a group that a high control cult group.
Yeah.
Whew, yes, I know. Okay, so you were 9. You had already come from this other space.
So basically, how it started was we're we're members, and the cult is located obviously in this small compound in Abilene, Texas. But as members, we're not required to live there. You
Okay.
still can just be in another place and be practicing the cult, right? And I started to notice it's crazy to be so young and being able to see things that it feels like the adults around you can't see. And so by 9, my mom is already a single parent with 3
Yeah.
kids, juggling this. She's extremely young, dealing with her own things. At this point, I'm already used to knowing that it's my job to kind of keep
Mm.
this family together, right? I'm
Mm.
the one planning the meals for the kids. I'm the one making sure the house is clean. I'm basically her teammate. I'm her co-parent, but co-raising the family while also in many ways kind of co-raising her, right?
Yeah.
Because she's young and she's got all of this trauma. And while a child is younger and they don't have as much knowledge, they have the benefit of not having lived through some of the stuff that a young
Absolutely.
adult has lived through.
Where does that come from any of us being younger and being able to see, even though this is the only world that we've known, being able to see like, oh, I have to help in this way, or oh, this isn't
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
something's wrong. Where
I
does that
think
come
it
from?
started with just this feeling of duty. And I think that's what a lot of us feel as oldest children, oldest daughters, particularly. But as the oldest child, you just naturally are given that duty, right? Like even in the best family, in the lightest situation, that's your little brother, make sure you give him your food. That's your little sister,
Facts.
don't hit it, right? You're automatically conditioned to like, these are the younger siblings, and I got to take care of them. And then
Mm.
if you're with a single parent, like I was, who's always having to leave, go to work, you're the default
You're in
caregiver.
charge.
Right, exactly. And so it was really interesting for me because that was the system I set up with my mom, where it was like, okay, she's maybe not able to handle the money right now. I would literally have her bring me her money and I would be
Mm.
sorting it out and saying, okay, we're putting this much on rent, we're putting this much on electricity bill. Next week, we're going to do this, planning out the meals. And so I really had this sense of like, you just do what needs to get done to help your family. It
Right.
didn't feel burdensome. It didn't feel stressful at the time because it just felt like this is what has to get done.
Mm-hmm.
What changes is now we're in the cult. And the number one rule is as a woman, you have no power.
You have
You
none.
have no intellect. You have no ability to run things. So now all of a sudden, my stepdad or the guy that she's dating at the moment, we're ordered from the cult leader. Yisrael specifically says, you must give him full control of
Whew.
everything. He must have all the money. He must have all the finances. He must make every decision. And I'm over here like, Okay,
But I've been doing it.
that's been my job.
That's
I've been doing it and I've been doing it well. I'm getting us out of the hump. I'm able
Yeah.
to look at the numbers and figure out where we need to go. I'm handling this. I'm telling my mom, you go to work and I'm over here. I'll make sure the kids are fed, their food, their clothes are picked up for school. I'm going to school. Like we have a routine.
Yeah.
And so it's like, great. Now we have men come in the picture and that's awesome. But we have no agency. And
Right.
that's like the first indication of how the House of Yahweh started to like take away my agency. And so we were told there's a man in your house, he is the head, and you need to listen, you need to obey. To even say, I don't think you should spend the check on, McDonald's this week. We should pay the rent is a violation.
Yeah.
It's back talking, right? And so there's all this control. And I just remember being like, okay, suddenly we're going to say, put you in the child's place again. So I'm going back and forth between these two worlds of, in reality, I'm being relied upon in ways that a child should not be relied upon. I'm doing so much of this labor, but I'm doing it because I'm thinking, okay, I can get us out of the situation. I can help us do better. And then there comes this institution that says, honestly, forget any talent that you have or the fact that you're able to make this happen. This man has full control. And I would watch
Absolutely.
him just be so flagrant with our money. I would watch it and I would be home saying, I need money for food. I don't have anything to make for dinner. From how poor that man was managing everything, he was getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I think the straw, the nail on the head or whatever it is, was coming home from school one day and we were evicted. And it turned out we hadn't had rent paid in months. And, to be a kid and you're coming home from school and you see everything that you own from inside your house on the street and people are rummaging through it. And I remember just looking at it and I shockingly I didn't feel angry or sad or anything. I just felt like I caught it.
You knew it.
I knew it. It was like, clearly this family system was dysfunctional, but I managed to find a way in the dysfunction to make it work. And if I just hadn't got cut off at the knees, could have worked. And
Yeah.
so I remember just having that feeling, and I bring that up because that, I'm a little bit foreshadowing, but as we talk about later and deeper in the cult years, that's how I always got through. It was just like I would see the cards and say, okay, how can I figure this out? And after we got evicted, of course, I remember we called Israel. We called the cult leader and we said, this is what's happening. I mean, we'd been calling weeks before and saying this guy can't handle the money. Anyway, the guy leaves. He can't take the pressure. And Israel says, well, because you don't have a man in your life now, you belong to me. I am your head. Come to Abeline, live on the cult compound. And that's how we ended up with the rest
Because
of it.
before, just so I have the timeline right,
Yeah.
you guys were not, like you said, you weren't living on the compound. You were living somewhere a little further away.
We're
So you
living in
would,
Missouri.
and how would you do his services?
I think it was like a online book or something. I don't really remember, but there was a way, and we did not miss it. Like it didn't
Yeah.
matter how poor we were or if we didn't have Wi-Fi. I think there may have been like tapes that they send you because we suddenly had a lot of material in the house
Yep.
that was related to it. Suddenly it was just like House of Yahweh book here, House of Yahweh tape here, House of Yahweh thing here. And so on Sabbath, I think that's what it was. I think we would listen to the recording because you can watch it as it's happening or something like that. Then he was like, you guys need to be here on the 44. That's what we called it, the 44-acre compound, which really just means this compound, its walls, big tall walls are erupted around the compound. There's security all over. No one's getting in and out. And so once we got there and we got in, it was like this promise of, okay, I'm going to be your head. I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be different. And then, obviously I had no idea that going there and being that close to him would be
detrimental as it was.
Yeah, that would be the worst thing for us.
Let's take a break.
Okay, so we in it. What is day-to-day life, especially that move? Because I assume you were in regular public school prior to the move.
Yeah.
When you moved to 44, what is that like?
So initially, you know, we make the drive from Missouri to get to the 44. It's like 14-hour drive, and we're excited. Like it's like a promise. It's
Of
like,
course.
yay, we have a head, you know, and our head is the leader. Like how lucky are we? And he's like, he tells my mom, I'm gonna give you one of my homes. Y'all live in there. You'll pay me rent, but you know, you can pay it however you need. It's slow. Don't worry about it. We'll get you a job on the 44. The kids will be in school. So everything just felt kind of like amazing. We get there. And the first thing I noticed is just where we were living. So
Of
we
course.
pull up and it's not a house, it's a trailer. And it's the tiniest, shittiest, little
Oh,
raggediest trailer you ever saw. And I remember like literally like just opening the door for the first time to like look inside of it. And you know, you're stepping on the little steps and it's such a flimsy little thing that even as children, stepping on the steps to enter it, it's squeaking, it's moving.
yeah.
Like there's holes in the ceiling.
It's not safe.
It's completely uninhabitable. I mean, in the winter, there's no heat. We just have the oven on hours all day because that's the only way we know to get heat. We have like old furniture in there. There's rats everywhere. And so it was just like terrible conditions. I mean, it was literally like it's rural Texas, so you're in a field
It's
of
hot.
grass. There's high grass, and so there's snakes. So our day life was basically we understand that there's snakes and rats all in our trailer, all in the field.
And I assume
There's
this is new to you, like
this is
this
completely new.
type of
This is
environment.
completely new. But again, it felt like, okay, all I need to do is know what the cards are, tell me the circumstances, and I'll find a way. And like that's me, that's how I've always been is I'm betting on me because I'm
Right.
just trusting that whatever Couture's instinct is or thought process, she'll be able to figure it out. And so, you know, I'm 9 years old pulling up to this ratty trailer. It's terrible. We, of course, are constantly being indoctrinated with sermons about fear and the end of the world and how we're going
Doomsday.
to die if you don't follow everything. So, even though in this tiny 3-bedroom trailer, one room is dedicated solely to the end of the world. It literally
Your
has
prep
our
room.
bomb shelter in there,
Yep.
our gas mask in there. But it just got to the point where, I mean, you walk in this and I just remember the disgust. I remember the feeling. So my siblings took one room because, you know, they can share a bed. My mom took the other, and I would just sleep on the couch. And so that was my life for years. I'm sleeping on this couch. And I remember because it was so rat infested, there's rats running through. You know, you can hear them, their little
Yep.
feet
Mhm.
curling through. So you can hear them at night, you know, while you're sleeping. And I would just
Yeah.
wear long sleeves and pants and crawl up in a ball and just be like, okay, just sleep for a little bit to the next
Asleep.
day. Right. So we're in this like terrible space. And I remember early on, Yisrael's like, go to the learning center. It's a center for children that we let cult members' children go to. They can learn. And it was like, okay, well, we might get some normalcy
And
here,
this was
right?
school.
This was school.
Okay. I'm doing quote
And
unquote if you're
quote
listening.
unquote,
School.
exactly. And I go thinking, okay, we'll all be taught here. And that's when they told me, you actually don't get school anymore. And so within like a week of that, I remember being like, well, I'm still going to go to public school, right? Because we started back in regular schools. We got re-enrolled in regular schools. And it quickly became, you know what? These schools are teaching our
Right.
children things that are against God. And then that
Mm-hmm.
escalated to the children shouldn't even be in school. And then that escalated to if you're not taking your kids out of school, you are disobeying God.
Mm-hmm.
And I you know, for all the like stress and the struggle and everything at home, school for me, I was a little nerdy kid. Like
Yeah.
school was the escape. School was
Absolutely.
the
It's your
one
respite.
space. Yeah, it really it's the one place where I'm not in charge. I'm not leading a family. I'm not, you know, dealing with stresses of finances at 9 years old. I get to just show up and learn. And
Yep.
actually remember leaning towards spending more times with my teachers just because I felt like I had already been in an adult world, forced to be an adult. You know what I mean? Like
So
while
you're
the
like, I'll
kids on
hang
the
with you.
playground talking about like, oh yeah, my best friend did this. I'm like, what do you mean games? I'm
Right.
gonna
Like,
go home and cook this meal and get
life
these
is
kids ready for bed. Like, you know.
Miss Barbara, you gonna have stroganoff this evening.
Right,
Was
exactly. I was
it
like, "Can somebody tell me how to properly put this in the oven?" Right. So I never connected with the kids. I connected with my teachers. And by this point, I'm in fifth grade and I'm just like that weird little kid that's like, you know, if you win straight A's, then you get, you know, your choice between the teacher time and the, you know, being with your friends. And I'm like, I just want to have lunch
teacher?
with the teacher. Exactly. And I remember it was like our graduation, my fifth grade graduation. And that's when someone from the House of Yahweh, I don't know who it was, but some guy came in and he just asked me, "Are you having a good time?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm having, you know, great time. It's fifth grade graduation." And he was like, "Good, enjoy this because you will never return to school again." And that was the day they took me out of school and told me that you don't need any more education and you won't be having access to school at all. So the learning center turned out to be the spot where I would drop my siblings off. I was no longer allowed to even talk about school, bring up school, talk about education. And
Now,
then
was this age and gender related? Like at fifth grade, you could no longer, sixth grade, girls don't need to go to school anymore. Was that the
you know, I
philosophy?
don't know if it was, but I will say it felt primarily gender related just because it was mostly women,
Okay.
mostly girls who were not in school because we were working with the cooking and the cleaning and managing the stores and managing the offices. I don't really know what the guys were doing or if the boys were allowed to be in school more. It felt like I got to watch the transition, right? Because when we first got there, it wasn't you don't go to school. We were just
Of
thinking we were going to
course.
go to school. I was literally in school. And it just felt like this is an example of how cults can just kind of say something from the pulpit
Yeah.
and everybody does it. And like literally when the guy is standing there and I'm looking up at him and he's like, "You're not going to go to school anymore." I remember thinking, "Oh, right. Last Sabbath, the preacher said kids shouldn't be in school."
Yep.
And it was like, "Oh, okay.
Boom.
This is what's happening."
Yeah.
And as the oldest, you know, I think about those moments and I'm like, I would have thought that I would have had more pain or anger or sadness around it, but it just came back to this sense of duty. And it
Yeah.
was like, what we need you to do for the betterment of your family, for the betterment
Yeah.
of the cult, for the betterment of the community, is you have to work these jobs. We need
Yeah.
you to work this store. We need you to do this. And so our day to day life literally was me 9, 10 years old, wake up, we drop my sister and my brother off at the learning center because they're younger. They're not learning anything
They're
there.
not
I'm
learning
sure it's like
anything.
talking about God and
Yeah.
cult stuff, right? They're
Yahweh
just
is
learning
the, yeah.
fractions. Yeah,
No.
no real learning.
Right.
And while they're getting dropped off, I'm going to one of my 3 jobs at the time. So I got assigned 3 jobs and I'm just working 12 to 16 hours,
Whew.
pick them
At
up in the
10.
evenings at 10, pick them up in the evenings, take them home. My mom is still working. I'm figuring out what food, how to navigate this shitty trailer. If the electricity is off, if we don't have heat, what am I doing? I'm figuring it all out and then doing it again the next day. And
So
that was our
rinse and
normal for
repeat.
years. Rinse and repeat for like 3, 4 years.
Going back to when you were in school, were there other people that called out anything? Did teachers notice anything? Did other peers notice anything, even though if they didn't know how to articulate it? Was there someone on the outside that was like, "What's up with this? What's going on?"
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. I think in those early stages, and the crazy part is that me being in school for me is a marker that this is the early days of a cult because that removing you from school happened quite fast after we got
Mm,
there. Like I was 10. I think we joined when I was 9 something. So it was pretty quickly. It was like less than a year after being in Abilene we were no longer in school. So I don't really think people had time or space because things really weren't different. In reality, I was just like a regular Black kid of a poor single mom who's like, yeah, we go to school, I come home, I take care of my siblings, right? It's not a crazy concept.
Right.
It's only after we get pulled out of school that things get a little more extreme, because now at 10, I'm spending all day, minimum 12 hours, typically like 16 hours, just working manual labor all day. And then that's when things got weird. But at that point, you're only around cult members.
Absolutely.
You're
By that
on the
time, you're
compound.
already in your
Yeah.
bubble where
Mhm.
this now is your new normal.
This is the norm. And in fact, it was like everybody's norm. You know, it was hard for me because obviously, you know, I'm dealing with a single mom. So we don't have someone to balance out and take the parental roles. So I'm doing parental responsibilities while also having his jobs.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just crazy because this is a testament to how brainwashed everyone was. I was making 25 cents an hour. That was my rate for being a child. My mom's rate was 50 cents an hour. And that's what the adults made. Like that was just adult generally. And so you can imagine this system where the adults are making so little money, but they're all working within the cult compound. We're not allowed to leave the compound. So you couldn't go out to Walmart and make even minimum wage or something like that. You must stay in the compound at all times. You're a woman and you don't have a man beside you, so you damn sure can't be leaving. You can't be on your own unassisted. And now you're in this trailer that's terrible, that's totally uninhabitable for your children, but who owns it? Israel, the cult leader. And I remember they would always say to my mom, because she's like, I can't pay rent making 50 cents an hour. Like I can work 1 billion hours. I'm never going to make it. And they were like, don't worry, it's okay. We just put it on your balance due. We would never come after you. Exactly. So now people are stuck here because you're feeling like I have this massive, you know, bill. You're indebted to them literally.
Exactly.
And they can continue to use that to force you to work more and work more. And so there's really what I didn't know at the time, but I can see so clearly now. It was such a masterful creation of a space where you absolutely are dependent on them 100%.
It's a fucked up system, but it worked.
It works. It works perfectly. It literally works perfectly. Because literally when I would be like, Mom, this trailer is shitty. Like, we don't have food here. We don't have electricity here. It's like, well, we got to wait on Yisrael to give us something more. And he's like, well, just keep serving. Just keep working, you know? And so now I got to work. And we're like, okay, well, we'll keep working. It was so random in this day to day that you have these moments that stand out to you. But I remember a moment that stands out to me so much. And it was when I was working at a life nutrition store, like a health food store that was on the compound. Because, you know, we can't go to the doctor because we can't leave the cult. So we were healthy as hell. Like, you know, we're taking vitamins and everything. And because we couldn't eat cheese or processed food, people weren't eating cheeseburgers. I know it sounds so random and so simple, but we couldn't eat cheeseburgers from any place outside. Well, obviously within the cult, we make our own cheese. We have our own cows. And they put up a little grill in the life nutrition store. And they're like, we're going to make hamburgers. And everybody was going crazy. Like, you can get a cheeseburger. Oh my God, you can finally eat cheeseburgers. And working at the register, let me tell you, no one would come get these burgers.
What?
And the manager kept being like, why? Everybody's so excited. Until we started telling people, you can put your burger on credit. Because people were making so little. They couldn't afford the it was like maybe $3, $4, maybe $5 max, right? Like, let's say it's a $5 burger. And once people found out they could put it on credit, people would be coming in, putting their whole paychecks down. Like, basically, write me down. So when I get paid, you can take my whole paycheck just to pay for that burger that I had on
Because
Tuesday.
that's a 7-hour day, a cheeseburger.
That's the whole day. That's your whole shift. That's probably your whole check.
That's a good 8-9 hours that you don't work for one cheeseburger.
That's like one way that I was able to see behind the scenes, like, this is really set up to keep these people stuck here.
Yeah.
Like, when you are grateful that you get to put your $5 cheeseburger on credit for the 50 cents an hour job that you're working.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, where are you mentally?
Because when are you ever then going to pay it off?
You
there
won't.
is no possibility of what you can't even go try to win the lottery.
And
You
when
can't
we
even, you
tried
can't
to
get out.
leave later, when we tried to escape, that was one of the big things that they held over us. Like
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the fear tactics.
You owe
Like,
us.
we're going to find you. You owe us. We're going to make your life miserable. That's one of the things they hold over you, that financial tethering to them.
Absolutely. Speaking of the financial tethering as well, I read something very quickly. In addition to getting paid sharecropper wages, there's also tithing.
Yeah. Oh,
So what is
the
y'all's
tithing.
I know tithing, girl. What
When
was
I tell
y'all's
you I was
tithing?
working 3 jobs, okay, so my jobs were, one, the Life Nutrition store, regular store, selling, doing all that stuff. 2 was our canning factory, where we're just killing chickens, killing animals, cooking them, cleaning them to can, because we have billions of cans for the end of the world.
The end of the world. Yep.
And then the third one was, we now trust you. You're this worker bee. We know you can just be left alone, told a command, and do it. And so we want you to work in the office where people pay their tithes. So this is what I mean by the upgrades, right? So I'm all like, I'm feeling special, and I'm seeing the money, right? I'm opening the envelopes of the tithes and who it's from. I have to record it and how much it is. And it's so crazy, because these are these moments where I'm all alone. I'm like 10, 11 maybe at this point, thinking, oh, I'm understanding how this works. You are only allowed to work in the world, quote unquote, which means outside the 44-acre compound, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're somebody that's able to make money so that you can send big tithes back. If you're poor, high school diploma, minimum wage job person, cut that completely. You're just going to be working in the kitchen. And that's what they did with my mom. And I got to see how people's tithes, people were paying 30%.
Yep.
30% of their income.
I think they got that from my cult.
Oh, really? Are y'all at 30?
We were at 30, baby. So we had a first tithe, second tithe,
and
a third tithe. And every few years, you had a 10% on the second tithe.
Oh, wow. And but see what I mean? Masterful. Literally
it's
masterful.
Brilliant.
Like,
because they also said for us, this tithe is just for the widows and seniors. So if you're a senior, you can get this. I just talked to someone and he was like, my mother never saw any of that money.
Wow. Oh, yeah. We never got money.
You ain't got no money.
You only gave money out. You only gave money to. And you just begged that hopefully. And I remember my mom would be like, crying, like, I don't have anything. Can you imagine where you are mentally, that you're making 50 cents an hour and you are still paying 30% of your income back into the cult?
Wild. That cheeseburger example is blowing my mind, because you're like, great, we can finally do this. We can have a simple cheeseburger. Mm-hmm. We can't afford it.
It's one of those things that 20-something years later still sticks with me.
Absolutely.
I remember how excited people were, but like no agency. None. And nothing in them said, I don't want to be in a space where I can't afford this $5 cheeseburger. It was just like, thank you for giving me the credit. Thank you for allowing me to put it on credit. How merciful, how kind, how helpful you are to say, let me give you this.
Exactly.
And no questioning of the bigger system. And that's why I started to look at the adults around me, and I felt like it's not that I can't trust them with my safety. I mean, I later learned that I couldn't trust them with my safety. Course. But in those moments, it was like, I can't trust you to make good decisions. I can't trust you to make smart decisions, because wherever you are in your own journey, you're not mentally capable of seeing how bad this was. And that's what I felt about my mom when it was that guy handling our finances. I'm like, sure, let's believe the cult. I'm fine with the religion. This is what we do. I'm a kid, but I'm like, but we can't do stuff that's going to harm us. And it was like that leap was too big for a lot of cult members to make.
Let's take a break.
Once you're in and you think about the ramifications, you think about the what ifs, what happens when you are disfellowshipped. Those ramifications are bigger than the self-harm that's actually happening while you're in it. And it's overwhelming.
Extremely.
I know that you guys, obviously, you were Sabbath keepers just like us.
Yep.
So
Saturday.
Saturday? No Friday, no Saturday morning cartoons for us.
Oh, absolutely not. I was eating up the meal I made last night.
See, we used to sneak and watch them. We used to sneak. We go get a Saturday morning cartoon in.
I think for me, my world was so non-childlike at all.
Right.
Like I don't even remember thinking of the concept of can I get a
Mm.
cartoon or can I, you know what I mean? It just felt like deep work, deep survival mode all the
All the
time.
time.
Deep, I have to make sure this is taken care of. And I remember my mom would work so late that she would come home Friday night. And as you know, Sabbath keepers, Friday at sunset
Friday.
is when the Sabbath begins, and you are not allowed to do any work
Any
after that.
work.
And you have to take, for us, I don't know if y'all have this, we had to take an ablution before the Sabbath begins, which means you have to immerse yourself in a body of water. So basically, you fill the tub up, you dunk underneath, the Sabbath has started, right? And you have to ablute, and you have to have your food prepared by Friday night at sunset. And so now, me thinking 10-year-old manager of the home and everything, Sabbath nights were some of the most stressful things because my mom and I had a system. I'm in charge of making the Sabbath meal. Who else could be, of course? So I'm making Friday's dinner, Friday night's dinner, Saturday's meals, the next Saturday night's meal, right? Right? Like doing all that prep. It has to get done because on Saturday morning when she's home, because it's the Sabbath, we're going to be looking around at each other after services like we're starving and there's
We're
nothing
so
here.
hungry. Yeah.
So I'm preparing literally multiple meals in advance with very little anything in our closets, in our pantries. I remember one Sabbath, I like opened the cabinets and I was like, okay, come on, Couture, you can do this. Like you can figure something out. Look what's around. And I think we only had a bag of flour and a bag of sugar. And I was like, well, if I mix the flour with water, it makes a dough.
Yep. Yep.
And I literally have my little sister nearby, and she's like, "You think we can eat it though?" And I'm like, "What if we put sugar in it?" And we're like over there experimenting, and I put it in the oven, take it out, and we like sprinkle more sugar on top. And that was like, we were like, "Oh my God, it's actually edible! Like it tastes good."
Oh,
So excited that I'm calling my mom, like, "Mom, I know what we're having for Sabbath dinner this time. Oh my God, I found this
oh.
amazing recipe." That was our life. Like, that was our joy. And that was our Sabbath meal. And so it was really like not the best routine, but it was our routine. It was like, okay, we're in a new place. Let me just figure out how I can just keep the unit, how I can keep taking care of my family unit because there's no one else around who can.
Was there any discussion, like when you guys got there, that your mother had and said, hey, this is what we're going to be doing? Or by that time, because you had already been listening to the tapes and reading the books, was it just, yay, we're here?
It wasn't yay, and we didn't have a discussion. It was, all right, pick it up,
Go.
keep going again, right? There's no
Yeah.
time for that. And one thing they drilled in us was you don't ask questions, you just do.
Yep.
No
Yep.
talking back, no questioning, no thinking. Ultimately, the goal was full control over your thoughts because you're not supposed to have any thoughts except yes, I'll obey.
Yep.
And your life, you don't have any life except for what we give to you. You don't have a living space except what we give to you. And I remember Sabbath nights were so stressful for me because keep in mind, my little siblings, they're little kids, they're noticing that they were getting raised by me. They're noticing that no one's around and things are stressful, things are filthy, things are, and so they're acting out. And
Yeah.
I remember I'd be constantly like 10 years old calling my mom, like, my sister's going crazy. What do I do? And it's like, but I got to get the Sabbath meal cooked. And you must ablute. And I bring up the ablution because it was such a big, oh my God, Lanisa, this was the worst part for me of my life. It was, you must ablute.
Talk
So
to
I
me
would
through
have
that.
to run a bath. So we have this bathtub. This is the trailer that has rats running through it casually, snakes, stray
You
cats
know,
coming. This isn't gonna be clean. So it's just really like, how your tub has that brown
the
ring
little
around
ring.
it, but it doesn't go away. It's like
Right.
there. And so it was just like this really filthy tub. And I remember being like, and I gotta, like force yourself to be in it and don't let it be like raining or something outside because
Oh,
then there's water leaking into
drippy.
the trailer and it just feels like dirt and wet. And like to this day, it's one of the things that when it's raining, I'm always like, am I inside? Am I clean? Am I comfortable? Like because I remember that
Yep.
feeling of just wetness and dirt and being like, I hate it. I'm uncomfortable, but I have to do it. And that was the theme. I hate it. I'm uncomfortable, but I have to do it. It just has to get done. How else am I going to take care of these kids? How else is my family going to go for it? And at that time, honestly, how else am I going to serve God and serve Yahweh
Yeah.
well, right?
And you are taught at an early age to then sit in that discomfort.
Exactly, exactly. It was just, I remember we would complain. We would tell Israel like it's so nasty, and I have to ablute. And he was like, "But did you get the kids abluted?" I'm like, "Yeah, I made sure everybody took their baths and got abluted, and I did it myself." "And do you have the food ready by sunset?" "Yes, I did." "Okay, then you're doing God's work. Done. Happy now."
Okay. This might be too meta. Who was God to you then?
Yahweh. God is
And
Yahweh.
what did that, was it a God of fear? Was it a God, a scary God? What was God to you in that way?
I think it was definitely fear, right? We definitely got the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, and
Ooh.
you always need to listen to your man, or God's gonna burn you in hell,
You gonna
right?
turn
Like,
into a pillar of salt.
pillar of salt. You better remember Lot's wife. You know what she did? She looked back.
She looked back.
She didn't blindly obey. If she just
She Googled
agreed,
shit.
exactly. She should have been questioning. She should have been listening. And so, yeah, there was that fear component. But I think for me, because I was a child with so much else happening around my world, oddly enough, like the religious part of it didn't feel burdensome to me. I
Mm.
didn't like when I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when I ended up talking about me being in a cult for the first time in 20 years on national television with, almost 10 million people watching, it was because I was naive enough to believe that this period of my life wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I genuinely did not understand that this was bad. It didn't feel bad in the moment. It just felt like turn off your emotions and get the job done.
Yeah.
You're used to being uncomfortable, but you always survive. And that's just what I do. That was my thing. I thought that was my superpower. I can just survive. I can always survive any situation, anything you put in front of me, even if everybody around me is too in their own worlds or for whatever reason can't see it. I can. I can help us. I can make sure we get through it day to
We could
day.
get through.
And so it's only now, as an adult looking back, that I'm realizing how impactful those years were for me, and that it is a scary time in my life. It was a stressful, but in the moment, and we talk about how, this cult is so masterful, and Yisrael was so masterful at grooming. He groomed me. And I
Absolutely.
really, I'm entering this cult at 9 at the absolute latest. It's 9
Yeah.
years old. I'm handling everything for the family, but I'm also a kid. And so I'm believing everything they're saying. Okay, this is Yahweh. We got to serve Yahweh. Cool. We got to pray 3 times a day. Cool. Let's pray.
Fine.
Right?
Yeah.
We got to put a headscarf on. I can't show my elbows. I can't show my knees. That's just life. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And it was never like an evaluation of what's happening around us and why and how we got here. It was more like, how do I pull us through?
Yeah. You don't have a full concept of that in order to
Yeah, exactly.
figure out, wait, this is insane. Your goal is survival. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that everybody has, that has been in a cult. We have that in us that like, no, but I
Mm-hmm.
have to survive.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
this notion of ancestral trauma and how trauma
Ooh.
manifests in the body.
Mm.
And I feel that a lot of cult survivors, especially Black people in general, we hold a lot of shit already. Because the thing you said about you not even realizing you were stressed in that moment, you not even realizing that the trauma was happening until you got older. That's
Mm-hmm.
something. It's still our body, it's still here.
Your body knows, though.
Your
Yep.
body
Yep.
knows.
Yep. Your body
And
knows.
it's not until we get out of it, until
And
we
it
go to
gives you these
therapy.
little, like, I feel like hints. Like your body's talking to you saying, alert,
Facts. Ooh.
hello. But you just don't know what they
Yeah.
are. And you're
Yeah.
honestly, quite frankly, if you're in survival mode, you're not in a space to be listening to your body.
No.
For me at least, it wasn't let me sit and figure out why my body's doing this, why my body's doing that. And looking back, I can see. So here's a
Yes.
survivor tie-in. When I would be like, typical day. I'm home after working all day. I'm with the kids. I'm exhausted. I'm cooking. They're screaming. They're going crazy. I'm handling, right? And I remember I used to like make these little noises. It's so random to talk about, but my siblings, my little sister, my little brother, of course, they're around me while this is all happening in my most stressful times. And they would be like, why do you always make those noises? And I would be like, like little random little noises that you don't really connect to anything. And I
Yeah.
think it was just me in trauma mode being like, you know, and
Couture
I
was
didn't
screaming out from the inside out.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
never realized it, never thought about it. And then when I played Survivor, it was, how often are you an adult in those situations where you have no agency again, no power? And, spoiler alert, when I played Survivor, I had no agency,
Yeah.
no power. I was completely at the bottom. Like I had no allies. And it was just a very miserable experience for me in some of those parts. And I was talking to one of my castmates later, and she was like, one thing that I really hated about you when we were playing together is you would always make those little noises. And I was like, what are you talking about? And like, mind you, I haven't thought about this or heard
Whoa.
this since 10-year-old Katurah in that shitty rat infested trailer, digging through empty cabinets, kids screaming. I've been working all day. I haven't heard that since those moments. And my little brother and my little sister are like, why are you making all these noises? And now I have this tribe mate who has no idea about any of this. And she was just like, yeah, sometimes at night or when I'm sitting beside you, you just would be like, and she thought it was me humming. And so she was like, I was just having to tell myself Katurah has a song in her head all the time. And I'm over here like,
Oh
the trauma comes back in
my
ways
God.
you don't expect. You know what I mean? Like it manifests
It
so
manifests.
much
Woo.
in ways that I'm like, how did I ever walk myself onto that TV show and think, I'll share this because it's the least traumatic part of my life.
Right. But
What the
that's what
hell?
we do because we are so used to like keeping stuff in.
Yeah,
We're so used to making sure that the outside is presented better than what the fuck is really going on the
exactly.
inside.
Yep.
Because we're taught to not pay attention to the inside.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't listen. Oh, your
Well,
body
also
doing
you
this?
just don't have time too.
You don't have time.
Like, how are you gonna listen to it when you're literally trying to make sure y'all eat
And
and
I
stay
guarantee you were
alive?
sleep deprived. I
Well,
guarantee.
I can tell you that 100% because I was working 16-hour days a lot.
Right.
Like it
As a
was very common,
10-year-old.
and it wasn't like, oh my God, you're working 16-hour days. It was like, this is just what we do.
You
I
just
don't
do
think
it.
I was the only one. I mean, I remember when I would drop my siblings off at that, quote unquote learning center. My first day there, I was looking for the big kids, the quote unquote, where
Yeah.
the 10-year-olds like me, and nobody was there that was big. So I
Yeah.
do genuinely feel like all of us were somewhere. I just had a different experience because I'm not coming home to a home, and I'm not coming home to, you get to drop this now and be a child. It's, you're the adult, you're in survival mode
24/7.
all the time,
It's
24/7. If you
24/7.
don't, this very fragile structure that you have will crumble, and it's only on you to keep it together.
Which makes sense why you said then that the actual Sabbath, the actual religion, actually sitting in a church was
In the
probably
background.
the background and
Yeah.
probably like, oh, thank God I could just sit in this
Just breathe.
church
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
breathe.
Yeah.
How long was y'all service? Did y'all have all day
Long as
services?
hell all damn day. And so we were like the needy family. So I would say like the only reason service would get cut short a little bit is because like the elders' wives would come with their baskets of food and give us food. It's like we didn't have anything. So that would be like the only reason Sabbath would be cut short. But you find ways of joy in
Yeah.
stressful situations, right? So it didn't feel terrible to me. Like I joined the choir. I had a
Yeah.
friend who was her mom was deaf, and I would spend time at their house. And so I started picking up sign language. I realized I have a natural knack for languages, so I would be the little kid signing the
Oh,
songs of the choir for Sabbath, and then
oh,
come down and then go to listen to the Sabbath services, and then we would have Sabbath school, and we'd be learning Hebrew, and so
yeah.
we had our routines. You know what I mean? And we had things, and it felt like this is okay. Like, it's scary, a major change from where we were back in Missouri. I miss school. I miss being around kids my age. But working alone, doing manual labor all day, it's working for my family. I'm
Yeah.
doing what I have to do and it's working. And I think I could have kept that up and we would have stayed there had it not gotten to the point where then the cult leader wanted to marry me. That
Oh,
was the turning
see?
point.
And see, that's a great commercial break. You good at this, girl.
I'm really
That's a great.
I'm like, oh my God, it's I'm like, dun, dun, dun.
That was good. I was like, boom, drop the mic. That was part 1 of Katurah Topps' story. To find out what happens next, get into part 2. Black and Cultivated is a production of Laugh Now or Wait Till Later. Created and hosted by Lanisa Renee Frederick. Produced by Yinka Rickford Angwin and Lanisa Renee Frederick. Video, audio editing, and all things tech, Antonio Ruiz and Jamil Nelson. Special thanks to Kevin Fredericks and Kev on Stage Studios. Leah Friars, Kara O'Connor, and Amir Edwards. Theme song by Rufus Moore. And finally, thank you. Thank you to each and every one of my guests for courageously opening up and sharing your personal stories on our podcast. Your strength, your resilience, and willingness to share is an inspiration. And for that, I am truly grateful. Deuces.